name tonight. So this is a time for you to share your thoughts, concerns, your ideas with the school board. We're not going to be, having a dialogue. We're here to listen to anything you have to say related to the school, the district. Just feel free to say whatever you'd like to say. The only thing we ask is that when you come up to the microphone, that you state your name, please, and address, and we just want to be respectful, no personal attacks, which I know you will do, and also, we don't want to say anything identifiable, like about teacher, administrator, student, that type of thing. So, protection of privacy. Okay? So welcome, thank you. Who wants to start? I feel like you're really far away. We're really far away?
Yeah.
Can we move the microphone over to maybe closer to people? I don't know.
We're all like for insurance, let's move to the front row.
Yeah.
Not that many of us.
Okay, there you go.
Come on, churchgoers, forward.
We don't want to get you. You know what to do.
Then you're not so far away.
Thank you. All right, who's going to be the brave person to speak?
I will allow you that.
Yes, thank you so much.
So, all right, I'll talk loud on my own side voice. Susan Higgins, 7 Fire 15. I've been in this community for 67 years. Always wanted to go to Strafford schools, but we lived in another state. Concerned about the rating of school. Concerned about where are we as a community going to move this school forward in its ratings. I'm looking at AI, of course, and it's saying that we're in a low numbers percentage of proficiency with our kids. It's a rough world out there. The kids of Strafford need to go out and leave the pond and go to the ocean and need to be competitive. So I'm just asking how the school board, with all the funds that you gather in taxes, where are you going to, or how are you going to move us forward so that our ratings come out higher, our kids have more efficiency, and throwing money to growth isn't the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, if we have time at the end, we'll try to answer some of the questions. Okay. All right, anybody else have a question or comment, an idea?
Brian Friendly, 117 Golden State through. Brian Friendly, 117 Golden State through. So kind of following on to that concern. I've got the Strafford school in the hand, and I'm concerned about the recommended or the required homework guidelines that appear to, if I'm correct, be published by the school board. Is that correct? And the guidelines, I think if I'm correct, they restrict no more than 10 minutes of homework for elementary school and 20 minutes for middle school. So with that, I'm concerned that the school board would take the position to make that requirement. Because with all due respect, we should be looking at our children's future and what's best for our kids' education. So, I'm hoping that this was done with the insight of our educators, not just the school. Yep, it's a recommended reading,
Yes.
but that's recommended, right? So I'm hoping that we're empowering our teachers to make the decision on what the required homework is, and not forcing a policy and taking the power away from educators.
Anybody else? Yes? Abby? Yes?
That doesn't work. These are outside
Okay,
words.
I didn't really come with anything prepared. I'm curious about the, Highland Neck tournament. I have three kids. I know that in New Hampshire, we have a multi-tiered system of support. And I understand about, raising the test scores for the school. And I'm wondering about kids who need challenge to stay engaged, and how can we keep kids challenged? Maybe they're doing really well, but they're fidgety because they're maybe what can we do in those tiers to meet all the kids where they are? And maybe there's kids who are masking their behaviors, are masking their intelligence. I don't think that, I wonder if I speak for a large number of kids, I don't know. That's one question I have, I don't know, will we get a chance to have other questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm Michelle Margaret. I missed the instructions because I was involved in it, so I apologize. Don't know what I'm doing. One of the things I just want to think about as a long-term planning is the idea of giving in an option for eighth grade algebra 1. I think it's just looking at requirements for some of the competitive technical schools. It's really important that kids get through AP calculus, and without the option of eighth grade algebra 1, it's pretty impossible for them to have that opportunity. And so I think not having that opportunity is, it is a struggle and something that we just like to have school consider. Margaret, A-N-G-R-I.
Thanks, Michelle. Hey, Sean? Well, okay. Anybody else? Share? You want to share?
I can always share. I'm Irish. Love seeing their leader. I have a package here, boys. It's lovely. My name's Mary O'Brien. I just moved to Strafford, but I grew up in Strafford, and I went to the school, and it was much smaller. So it's really exciting for me to be back in the school. Last year I did the probably worst job in the world at the school cafeteria duty. But, you know, the kids are great. I see the teachers as working so hard to make this a positive learning environment for students. I love the staff here. I love the environment of the school. I feel like it brings out the best in children, family that goes here now as a child. I am in total agreement with the homework policy. I'm a retired teacher, and research is not showing that homework improves test scores. It just disrupts, you know. I know everybody in this room probably has experienced the get home from school, do your homework, get this, do that, go here, go there, hurry up, before you know it, it's bedtime, and you really have, you know, had a positive interaction with your child. So I think that the more we can encourage families to be present and, you know, continue to do all the right things that happen at the school that promote climate and positive self-esteem, I think our children will continue to strive. And I personally, what do they say in the movies, like, don't give a damn about teacher, a test score is like one snippet of a child. And I had a student who did very poorly on his test scores. He was like one of the brightest kids I ever met, but he just wasn't a test taker. So I hope that we don't start putting more pressure on kids and on staff. As a teacher, if my students didn't do well on the test, I was penalized as a teacher, which is crazy. You know, it's like you go to the doctor and you don't get a physical. Your doctor doesn't get in trouble because you haven't been, you know, being healthy. So I just think that it's really important for us to be supportive of what we have here that's good, and to believe in our school and in our students and in our staff. And I thank the school board for doing something I would never do. But thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Sarah Tremblay, 117 Building 6. I know my husband got up earlier and spoke about the homework thing, and that's a concern of mine too, with our son who's ready to go into middle school. Just want to make sure that he's ready to go to the grounds. We heard that, or we know Cole Brown is an excellent high school, and we're excited for him to go there. And we just don't want him to go there going from very little homework to all of a sudden not knowing how to manage hours of homework. So that's a big concern that we have. We do think education is important. And then the other thing I wanted to say was thank you for doing this. I wish there was a better turnout, but I think people that came, like, this is a great opportunity to be able to talk and have discussions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes? Would you like to turn to sleep? Would you like to share?
Oh, no, I'm mostly just here to listen.
Okay.
I'm here to listen.
Here, anybody else? Oh, you're,
Yeah,
okay. I didn't hear. There you go.
Should we say?
Yes.
Katrina Lefrak. So I have 3 kiddos in school, and a few things that I would be in support of and I hope to see, I've kind of talked about for a while now, is potential for field trips, and maybe how the school board has supported. I know that there's always costs associated with it, and a lot of times the PTO will support like the transportation. That's a large cost. Is the cost something that holds it back from students being able to get experiences outside the classroom? And in New Hampshire, I know there's a lot of opportunities for them to do that. I'm new to as a middle school parent this year, so I'm just now learning about intervention at the end of the day, and I think that it's a great opportunity. At the parent meeting today, we heard a lot about ways that it can keep kids caught up, or kids that need a little extra help. But I think that we probably have a large amount of students who are already caught up and maybe don't need extra help on something, but can actually maybe excel in areas, and making sure that that there's opportunities in place other than a student just being propped up on a computer during that time. And I think that that could potentially, I don't know the limitations of this, be used for enrichment type of things. So I believe that maybe beta or chorus happens during that time. And so maybe there's other, I don't know if it's club type activities, but things where students who are where they need to be can go and do further enrichment activities during that time. I'm in support of, I was in support of the homework policy. I actually was in support of no homework, but I felt that advice that we get a lot of pushback. I think that time at home in the evening is very important for families, and our children are here all day long to learn, and then we put a very strong focus on academics. over the last few years, and so I think that we should let families be able to structure their very little time they have in that form. And we talked a lot about community and volunteerism, but I wish that I had like I wish I knew exactly how to put that more into action, right? We're always saying, you know, we love the community, we more involved, we love more volunteers, but to actually like see that play out, sometimes I feel like it's just hasn't come to fruition yet. And like, what does that look like to really have this be, you know, the community more involved?
I'm gonna piggyback off of Katrina. Eric Bowman's on Overlook Lane. As far as community involvement, I've always pictured like, kind of like, it'd be great if we had a little adopt a spot here. People like the community clubs, the women's club or the garden club could maybe have a little garden out front of the school. And I don't know how to make that happen. I'm on the facilities committee. I just think it would be great if we could kind of beautify some of our property here. I know a lot of good things have happened. There's some new grass in front of the SAU, and steps are being taken, but I think there's definitely things we could do. But I don't know how to bridge that gap between the school and the community. So, and I sit up there, so I imagine how everything else feels.
I think about what's top of mind would be my second grader who's come so far. It's amazing. He started in kindergarten with an IEP and now he's excelling and it's wonderful. So you're doing something right. I also think about safety and security and school shootings and what is this school doing? What are we learning from other schools where these tragedies are happening? Is my child safe? So education is key, but I'm very, very proud of this everything in the class.
I guess I'll piggyback on what Katrina said on Meg. My brain just went blank about like enrichment and I'm also new to the middle school, and I know about intervention at the end of the day. And I'm wondering about, I also heard today about what I need here again. I'm curious about if that happens in middle school and how does that work in middle school, and could that also be a place where kids who need to be met where they are have a chance for enrichment? And I'll say it again that it would be great to get some language back in the school. Anything would be great, like a world language program. I know it used to be in the school, and I think I've heard that there was a trip to Montreal at the end to celebrate what all of the students had been learning. That sounds great. So I think that's something that the town is proud of, and it would be great to see it. And then, sorry, things are going in and out of my head. When I ran for school board, I met a lot of people in the community who aren't necessarily parents. But everybody, I mean, the school is really the center of the town and the community. And I'm also on the library committee, so I hear, I talk to people. And there's a lot of people who would want to volunteer or support the school and the school board. Parents, I think, have a lot going on, year, which is really good. But I think there's some other populations who would like to be involved if we could figure out how to reach them and welcome them into the school. So that's trying to think if I have any specifics, but I just feel like I met people who were educators or are educators who are like, I'd like to be involved in this. So maybe we can find them, or I can talk to them.
Thank you, thank you.
I'll just piggyback and next request for a return for world languages in school. I think that is so incredibly important. I know that I had it required in college and I didn't have it in high school. And it was really, really, really hard. And even if I had the research shows that your brains are most liable to learn languages between like 0 and 10. And our kids aren't starting until high school, even hearing it, even just having it as a weekly enrichment where it's not every day. I just think that's so important. And the other thing I will say is just sort of piggybacking on what I'm hearing in terms of enrichment. I know that's something that my kids really always desired is being able to push themselves. And it was a couple of years actually that I had requested on multiple occasions an opportunity for enrichment that I'd actually requested and didn't hear back anything. And it would be really nice if there were like a menu of enrichment opportunities for parents who are seeking, not so much parents that are seeking for their kids, but kids who need something more than what they are currently learning and are sitting in the back of the classroom on a device trying to accelerate themselves because they've mastered the material. That's really not a healthy place for kids to be in school. And so the more that the school can partner with parents to offer them a menu of services, activities, opportunities, I think that would be very well received.
Thank you.
Jerron Mancus, 1, 2, 3, Sunny Oaks Terrace.
I didn't use it.
Jerron Mancus, 1, 2, 3, Sunny Oaks Terrace. First I want to apologize for laughing. My daughter is bilingual, so I know some people know that, but I didn't know the reference was to me, or not reference to me, but like if I thought I just want to apologize. But most importantly, I want to say how much I appreciate everything that I've heard tonight. I want to say how meaningful it is to me, and just knowing everybody is doing their best. And so I just want to be grateful and again apologize for laughing at you.
Thank you.
Sue Higgins again, and I'm known in town, not sitting on my hands and not taking my mouth. So, October 5th, there's a volunteer fair at the Grange that we're hoping a lot of the organizations in town would be there. It'd be a great opportunity to see if you could engage with them. In reference to the garden, Carol Chickarella is chair of the garden club, and they're always looking for other places to put posies and flowers and whatever. I'm always looking for kids to help, like chili and chowder, and maybe if to dovetail on their academy, to be able to get community service hours, puts them out there learning from other groups, other parents, whatever. In the community I came from, we had professional development day for the kids. What do you want to be when you grow up? And we had a whole bunch of professionals come in and talk to kids and start their creative juices going at this age, middle school, even before they get to high school, because by the time they get to co-ground, they better kind of have a track of where they want to go, so they pick out the right classes. But we had a whole bunch of different people with different backgrounds come in and talk to kids. I have a criminal justice background, but I didn't go into criminal justice. I'm an investigator. And kids don't think of things they could use if they wanted to do criminal justice. My husband was a forensic scientist, so, you know, he would always have the kids want to know stuff. But we have plumbers in town who can talk, and you need to be able to get these kids to think that maybe academics is not their thing, and that trade school is the way to go. So, you know, maybe for the enrichment time that everyone's talking about, the kids that are like sitting back there trying to figure out some more, you could have some speakers come in during that period of time.
Thank you, Sue.
Sorry, I just wanted to, there was a comment earlier, I agree with you, I think it's great. I also wanted to add, parent, you were looking for, there's a relationship, sorry. There's a trend in the United States towards loneliness. And people are, I think a lot of older folks struggle with loneliness. And in my mind, I always have a vision of the, as somebody said earlier, the school is the center of town. And I don't know if there's a way to bring in people who maybe are older. I mean, the bus can pick them up in the morning, bring them to school, and let them engage with the kids, and you get that co-benefit of younger people engaging with older people feeling less isolated. I mean, I think there's even a model about having a clinic that's available to the town. There's no healthcare provider in Strafford. We've got a nurse, you know, maybe, you know, there's an opportunity to bring in a nurse practitioner who could maybe generate revenue. I don't know, that's a wild idea, but there are models out there where schools are at the clinic, the library, for the community center, older adults, and a clinic within the facility. It becomes everybody's place to start looking for resources. Social workers that are accessible to the town. We've got a public transportation system with great buses, you know, for people who might be homebound. I teach nursing at UNH, and I just had a student the other day who did a home visit with somebody, not in Strafford, but they hadn't left their home in 2 years. So, you know, how do we get these people integrated and into socialization that can reduce feelings of isolation and loneliness, as well as improving the health and well-being of our entire community. And engaging our kids who are going to be taken care of, you know, becoming the next doctors and nurses and teachers and firefighters and plumbers and all the jobs that we need in our community. Thank you.
One is that some people think it would, to engage the community, it would be great to have the performances, like the band and the theater performances, to be really widely advertised to the community. Older people do not like, some people don't like to drive at night, and some people feel like they're taking their lives into their hands when they try to park on the side of roller coaster road to get in. So, like, parking and time of day, all, it should be just really accessible for people to really come in to the school and see where all their money is going. That's sort of what I heard. Even sports events, like, try to let people know that the school would love to see everybody in town, you know, at the productions that we do.
I would just like to suggest to the board and the community to think about doing something that I experienced when I taught at Strafford. It was called an enrichment club. It was very well organized. They spent the whole year finding different people to come to the school on that day. And the kids would sign up for maybe 3 different sessions. And those of you who have lived in Strafford for a long time, if you remember the Blue Ranger, he was one of the people that came. So it was a wonderful event. People from all over came and spoke to the kids, and they just had the opportunity to, maybe do something. A local artist came in, they could sign up for that, do silk printing. They could have a woodworker come in, and they did a little project. I think that's a great idea, and then if we could get those resources together, have a list of all those people, then maybe we can try to engage them throughout the year. My other comment is years ago, we used to open up our cafeteria on lunch, which is a really good deal to eat lunch for, I think it's like $4 for eat lunch for an adult. To open it up for the elderly in town, to be able to come in and have lunch while the kids are having lunch. So we do have classes that go over to the library. They partner with like grandparent partners. And that is so successful. The kids love that. I think the people who volunteer to be with the kids love it. So just more suggestions. Thank you. Anybody else? I do have an email I just wanted to share. Do you have a couple of emails? Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody else have a suggestion for speak? Yes? No? Okay. We asked people if they couldn't attend, if they wanted to email something to us, to do so. Let me get the name right. Do you have the name? Oh, okay, great. Okay, it's Rebecca Frober. She wanted us to look into crosswalk to the library and a sidewalk in front of the school, and then a sidewalk from the lower parking lot up to the school. Travis? Okay, Travis was asking why we serve not enough butter instead of peanut butter. And because we used to have peanut butter, now we do with peanut butter again. And then it talks about some concerns about soy-based butter. Okay. That's it? Okay. All right. Anybody else have suggestions, ideas? Okay, let's see if we can maybe talk about it. Maybe we have a few minutes. We can maybe try to answer a couple of the questions. Okay, Sue, you asked about what we're doing to improve our ratings as the school district. I'm going to let the superintendent share some information with you. I know you're prepared.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. When I started, we were in a pretty much a free fall. The scores were dropping every year throughout the year. It had been going on for, I think at that time I said about 15 years. I came forward and explained what I was seeing. Really, 2 years ago, we saw a decrease in that drop. Like it stopped going down as fast. And then this last year, we actually saw it really kind of, it's not going down more. We actually saw some definite signs of improvement. And I think the thing that we're really sensing right now is particularly the elementary level, there's real improving and rebirth of that excitement and that sense of camaraderie that you need to have amongst your staff in order for them to feel like they belong, to slow that turnover rate down. That was a big part of what we were experiencing, was a huge amount of turnover in year. And what I can say is from last year to even in just 1 year's worth of time, I just feel like the elementary is really starting to blossom and take off. I anticipate over the next couple of years, as we have more test scores come out, that future, fingers crossed, we're going to see that reflected in those. But I can also say that from my own walkthroughs, when I go to classrooms, there was that last year, we've done one so far this year, I'm letting everybody kind of settle in before the student day starts walking. But what I saw last year was just a steady, in my opinion, improvement in engagement. Like the kids seem so much more engaged than they have in the past those first couple of years going through the walkthroughs. I felt like I was missing from a lot of places. And now I'm seeing that that really has been addressed. And I think that's the first step in terms of getting around the kids having to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of classroom management, a sense of academic structure. And we're really sensing that. I really think that that's a great part. Middle school is still kind of finding its way, and I think part of that's because a lot of those kids that they haven't had that earlier structure. So I think that that's one of the things that the hope is that, you know, obviously we can work as hard as we can with that group of kids, but as these folks are going from kindergarten to first grade to second grade with all of those pieces of excellence in place, that they're going to arrive in middle school in a better, stronger place. I think probably the other biggest thing is everybody talking about enrichment has been my top concern. And I think the true way that we start to make that happen, we haven't figured this out yet, but it's just something that's time and so many other things, is that kids have to have a sense of the connection of what they're currently doing, what they're thinking they're going to do in the future. They have to see that connection. I don't know how many times when I was teaching middle school or high school, kids would be like, why am I learning this? This is stupid, this is boring. And until they had that sense of, well, okay, let's do some interest inventories, let's find out what you like to do. And doing this in 5th grade or 6th grade and saying, okay, well, those interests relate to these types of jobs. I'm not saying that you're going to be any one of those, but these are your interests, and here's some of those possible jobs. And helping them get a sense that that possible job, like, starts to spark some ideas in their heads, and then for them to start hearing from experts in the field would be great if, you know, we had a number of kids say, hey, I'm interested in veterinary sciences, to be able to bring some vets, some vet techs, and people like that in, and have them talk about how math instruction is important, how being able to read, write, and spell, and all that stuff is important. And for those kids to start to hear how important those are going to be for them to make those future choices. So I think, number one, I'm seeing a huge strengthening in elementary. I'm seeing a lot of effort in middle school. A lot of behavior stuff still happening there, which has been following us unfortunately for years. So I think that's another part of the challenge here. But once again, I feel like there's a lot of positive energy, a lot of people pushing in the right direction. One thing I did an activity a number of years ago when I worked in another district where we had people all identify stuff and they put arrows, and those arrows were in all different directions. And our goal was to get all the arrows pointing in the same direction. And once again, I think that analogy works here. I think that's what we're starting to see here. I feel like people aren't leaving. Like we had no turnover in elementary last year, first time since I've been here. That's huge. So all
That's
those
in the staff?
in my staff,
Okay.
my staff, there was no turnover at the teacher level, but they all came back. And as a result of that, they're all getting a second year to collaborate collectively together and to really, once again, to start to grow and progress. And some people have been here for years. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just simply saying there's no turnover. We have no year one people in the elementary level this year, which is huge. So once again, I think we're starting to see some of that. We're starting to see some of the efforts that are being made, panning out. Natalie at the elementary level, I think, is doing a great job being a leader. But I'd also say, man, teachers are just, like, lack of a better way of saying, get butt taking names. They're just doing the job, they're doing it well. I'm impressed. That was about me.
I know. Do you have another question? Did you want to follow that?
I've been itching to respond to something here.
Sarah?
I'm Sarah, and about the policy. I know it's like homework's not fun for the kids, but for kids, including me, but I find that it's really helpful. I find that like if I didn't have as much homework, I would get a little bit worse scores on tests, quizzes, that sort of stuff. But yeah.
enrichment. More languages. This is all something we can talk about in the next budget. And I guess maybe let's go with more language or whatever ready that we can end up having. Oh, all right, you want to talk about the intervention time and how that's utilized? Intervention?
Intervention time was an idea that was kind of brainstormed last year, looking at how can we, particularly with middle school, that was the bigger effort. How do we provide students that need additional time to work with staff, to catch up on things, to start to put gaps in their learning backgrounds? How do we start that process? And I think it was one of the biggest efforts made by the middle school last year to really start to address those deficits. I understand enrichment. I believe strongly in enrichment, and I know that it would be a dream of ours to have that, have it sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, we had to start with the deficits because they were fairly significant and fairly widespread. The vast majority of our students were not doing well on testing. Their scores were not coming back proficient or above in many instances. And even students that were coming back proficient had significant gaps in certain areas. A big part of that, I believe, was due to turnover. There's just every year, people, they don't get to something, that particular group of kids misses that something, and that hole sits there all the way through, right? I mean, because we don't fill that, we don't have a mechanism for filling that in future years. So that really was the goal of it last year. We're continuing it this year. We did get a lot of feedback. There was too much time on computers, things like that. We are trying to do more synchronous, like working with a staff member, doing some of that. But the asynchronous is the best way to meet the children where they're at. Think about every kid has a different area of weakness, and the software allows us to have them work on that particular weakness. So that's why the software still is at the center of what we're doing. But the dream, as I said, and will it happen before the end of this year? I can't make that promise, but I know that the planning and the thought process behind it will start this year. How do we start to break free of everybody in gap filling mode and start saying, how do we start to enrich above and beyond that? I would argue any student that feels like they want that already, like right now, they feel like I have the gaps, I'm ready for that enrichment. Challenge your teachers. I'm not suggesting be rude or beaten, but challenge them. Say, hey, what can I do? Algebra 1 is a great example of that. I too agree that every single student should have Algebra 1 before they finish their grade. Every student. You think about high school as kind of like a Plinko board. You're at the top of the Plinko board, you have every possibility at the bottom available to you. The further down that Plinko board you go, or the further you progress through high school, the fewer possible outcomes that exist. Well, you can actually go all back to kindergarten and say that's the truth, right? But definitely in high school, that's what's happening. And if we don't have students ready in math, reading, things of that nature, we're putting them at a disservice when they go into high school. They just already enter high school with fewer possibilities. And I can tell you that from my own experience, the reason I was able to be a nuclear machinist mate in the Navy was because I went all the way in math. If it wasn't for that, if I didn't have calculus before I went and took my Navy tests, I most likely would not have gotten into the nuclear program, and it was my dream when I signed up. So I agree with you. You've got to somehow figure that out. Remember, to get to Algebra 1 by 8th grade starts in kindergarten, probably preschool, probably even younger, right? I mean, getting kids to recognize those numbers earlier. And I know there's a ton of research out there. Too much, with 2 and 3-year-olds, it's actually bad. So I'm not suggesting to go crazy with it, but anything that anybody can do from the earlier ages just to get number sense, to get kids excited about numbers, and then for us to strengthen that curriculum from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade over time, the dream will be the vast majority of our kids are getting through the Algebra 1 curriculum by the time they complete 8th grade. When I said our test scores were dropping for over 15 years, it's important to realize, I'm not suggesting we take 15 years to get back. but you don't get there overnight. Every school year brings kids a certain distance. If they're behind and have been behind for a while, it takes time to get that back on point. So we do have to look at that over the long term. But that's an example of one place where I think we can enrich our students' learning is in their math sense. Love languages. I was horrible at them. I'm so glad whichever parent was that said their child is bilingual. Wish I had been. I took French 1 like 3 times, and I still can't get out of the starting gate for French. But so I would love to have language. But before I go into world language, I'll let you. I do want to say something about the intervention.
Oh, and the intervention, just for a specifics of it, the way I understand it is, coming from the school, is that teachers will sign kids up to certain things that day. So if they know that they need to work with the LA that day, they'll sign up to work with the LA teacher that intervention period. If they know they need to work with math, they're signed up to work with math. They also, with their band and chorus, the kids use that time to go to band and chorus. There's details of the test scores. We have to also think about this. The tests have changed several times. So the way that we evaluate the state testing has changed, and this current one is very challenging. All right.
Regardless of what test you take, my dream would be that we beat state average, that we're in the top half of the state of New Hampshire. So that's the vision that I have, and once we get there, then maybe my vision will expand, but for right now, I think a realistic goal for us is to say from grades 3 through 8, regardless of what test you throw at us, can we do as well as the average state score? And if we can, and we get there, then I think the next step would be is, okay, well, how do we improve beyond that? Because I'm also not a big believer in tests, and any of you talk to your kids, ask them what their thoughts on the state exam is. You're going to find there's not a lot of value in it, right? Most students look at it as something I have to do. It's not something they want to do. It's not something they feel confident is better preparing them for high school or college or anything else. To them, it's a task that has to be checked off and suffered through. When that's kind of feeling, don't imagine we're getting their best energy. So, in our last district, we tried to encourage, entice, and bribe, and everything else you can imagine. The test scores barely improved. That it's got to be intrinsic. There is no extrinsic force, in my opinion, on earth that is going to make a kid go into their science state test and perform better at it. Any of them,
We actually have illegal ones that we give to kids at least twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and that is actually a better indicator of the kid's growth. It looks at each individual child, how they do, and how much have you grown from the fall to the winter. How much have you grown from the winter to the spring? So we have different ways to look at achievement, and that's actually a better indicator than the state testing, right? So, you want to world language?
So world. So world languages, in reality, we should be trying to be bilingual in our home from the day that kids are born. I've been with that. I tried doing Spanish in my house, and language is so tough for me that was just not going to happen. We can all say, count to 10. We can all, say Mikasa, Sukasa. We get away with a few things, but I wouldn't make it very far in Dominican or Mexico or anywhere else. So I recognize the importance of it. I know it's super important. More and more people in our country are speaking more and more different languages. We're one of the few countries in the world that aren't bilingual or multilingual. So it's such an important thing. I don't right now have the capacity to figure that one out for everybody, but we are having discussions about are there ways for us to maybe give tools and resources to folks. But once again, with me so focused and my staff so focused on the reading, the writing, the math, the filling gaps, the behavioral, the social emotional, we're working so hard on so many things. I don't know where that capacity comes in for me to add world languages to the plate. it's not as simple as saying, let's hire a person who can teach world languages. Number one, I have no engagement. So where does that person go? Number two, you have to convince the community that this is a worthwhile investment because teachers are expensive, right? You're talking $80, $85, maybe even $90,000 to bring another teacher to the district. I think the next part is what do we give up in exchange? So kids have full days. So what is given up to get world languages in? There's just so many pieces of the puzzle that have to be figured out. Other districts do it. So if it became a priority, if it became like, you've got to get this in here, then we'll put it in there and we'll figure it out. We'll get it in there. But at the same time, our plates are extremely full right now. I'm just worried to push my staff any harder than they're already working, because they're working very, very well.
I just want to clarify, I am not bilingual. That would be my wife. So my daughter. Okay. Second of all, I mean, I can read in Portuguese. Actually, that's about it. So I want to take a step back and possibly ask that we consider a different North Star. I know it sounds overwhelming, but I think that if we think about it in small steps, but we have our North Star, we want to be the best school in New Hampshire. What if that was our North Star? I don't want to be average. I want to be the best school. I want our kids to have the best scores in New Hampshire. I know that we can do it. Can we do it tomorrow? No. But if that's our North Star, right, that's a whole different conversation. We can get our kids there. How long does it take? Is it, you said you can't do it, without 15 years is too long. Right? That's two whole cohorts, right? How do we get, our kids are doing their best. Everybody's doing their best. How do we do better as a community? In our North Star, we're the best school in New Hampshire. Whatever the incremental steps that it takes to get there, we can do it. 100%. And I know money is a piece of it. And that's part of, like, you know, adding value to the community. For the school, showing them. I love the idea of bringing them in the community for like plays and music and arts. You know, could we have a language teacher that also taught, you know, to the community? I think the more that we dream big, the more that our kids are going to dream big. The more that we give them the opportunity to shine, the more that they're going to want to engage in those tests. The more that we make the connection between algebra is important for geometry, and geometry is important for construction. Electrical sciences, right? That's important for if you're going to be an engineer or an electrician. How do we make those connections to all the possibilities? I don't want to, also I think the idea of preparing students for a job doesn't allow them to reach their full potential. Because I've had a lot of jobs. I've made for, I've been a cook. I must love dishes, not very well. But, you know, I've had a lot of jobs, right? I'm a nurse, I'm a teacher. But it's also being a citizen, right? I don't know how much, you know, like somebody mentioned field trips, and my first thought was like going to Concord and seeing how that works, having active citizens who are engaged, right? So all of this I say to come back to this idea, what is our North Star? Because if we know where we're going, we can figure out the steps to get there. Thank you.
was thinking of as I was sitting there, one that's kind of been talked about more recently is, the day that we get out of school and how late it was this past June. I know we added 5 minutes to the end of the day to help and have our release date a little bit sooner. We spent most of our time not in school because, not because of snow, but because of power. And shame on me for not being more aware, but I was just kind of wondering, like, what we were taking into consideration with either the infrastructure or having time at home that counts as instructional time, if that's even possible. I should be more aware, but I know that's just a topic that a lot of people have talked about recently that maybe we could do something about.
I want to touch on your question and also get to the safety and security that was asked about. I think almost some of it, they tie in together. I will. She's going to.
Sue wants to talk.
You want to talk again, sir?
I have some questions.
Yeah, sure.
that have come up.
So I'm on the other end of the spectrum, no kids, so I hear a lot of chitter chatter. And we keep hearing that more kids are leaving our school system. And I didn't know what were the numbers. What have you found out from those parents? Why are they pulling the kids out of the school system? Why are they going to charters, private schools, homeschooling? And what is the teacher-student ratio now in Strafford?
There's lots of questions. We're gonna try to answer some of these quickly. I want to just do this, the safety.
I just have one other statement
Oh,
about
okay.
the languages.
Keep going.
My son's elementary school actually had retired people that spoke languages that came in after school, be an after-school club, that worked with the kids on Spanish, French, whatever the kids' interest was. And that is another way to engage your senior population. You have,
It's one of
we're
us.
60% of our demographics is 60 and older, which means like we're getting out of work. We're not doing it anymore, but they too need something other than the golf club. So,
That's one of the places we thought about languages might be possible. We also
Yep.
thought about maybe some online.
Yep.
Thank you. So I think you talked about safety. Just quickly. Let's see, it was, okay, about the safety and security. Yes, yes.
I think it's we're on the really good together. I don't want to get too into detail about security, but I would think it would be very proactive about trying to assess the condition of the building. Looking for the phones and internet and servers and all of that stuff that is getting to be on a useful service. So I think that reduces my help with being able to it's been a combination of some things we've already started to have before, different items. And some things we can kind of shift the way up with the building. We are.
Yeah, a few years ago, we had an audit come through for security and assess the school, and you don't like to talk, don't really talk about that, everybody, but, because of the safety aspect of it, but we did take some of those things into account, we do consider that stuff, when we make decisions. I mean, if you come here during the day, and a lot of people, the school's locked. When I used to have to go to the principal, the door would be open and I'd be sitting in a chair right out in front of the door, so, we're locked up a lot safe, a lot better. Sign of the times, so we do take that stuff into consideration.
Thank you, Larry. I don't know if there's, maybe we can touch on one of Sue's questions. The student-teacher ratio, our classes are pretty small. Yeah, on a grade level, that's usually, it's available in our minutes once a month. We print off the enrollment, the supposed to be, you should scan it.
Or it'll be in our board.
Oh, it's in our board pack, we'll make sure it's,
Available
they're available online. They're available online, so if you know where our website is, you can look at our past packets. So,
It's close to 21.
And then they have, support staff in there with them as well, right?
There are parents at certain
Parents.
places, but most of the parents are special ed.
So they're signed on one with another child?
Not just one, there's small groups, one-on-ones, there's different services that those parents provide, but it's special. Most of it's special ed.
Free general ed.
General ed, but even one of them is.
If all positions are filled. You know what I'm saying?
We need parents, I'm telling you, we need parents. We have, I think we're just about out of time. I guess we're out of time. Something else you want to say?
If I can say one last
Okay,
thing.
sure.
Just two thoughts. One, in addition to safety, physical safety features, one of the most effective things what I've read in literature would suggest that mental health services is the number one factor in reducing risk of, and so I appreciate that the mental health work that we do have. I'm super excited to be done here tonight at the parents' meeting, so I'm really happy to hear that. But I do think that that's almost something in addition to the safety features. I think that's something to consider. The other thing is, it made me think about it when we, talking about parents going to other schools, why parents go to other schools. And I want to circle back to what I said about if our target is to be the best school in the state of New Hampshire, people are going to come here to go to school. They're going to pay us to educate their kids. They're going to take their resources. Instead of our resources going somewhere else, other resources are going to come here. That's another way to think about it.
Thank you. Michelle, you have one quick one.
Don't typically like to talk about this publicly, but it's been asked. And I'll just preface this by saying I'm a strong believer in public schools. Anybody who knows me knows that's true. My kids are not here. My kids are currently in private school. They have been for about 2 years because of the lack of opportunities, because I advocated for enrichment opportunities that were elusive, because there was no path to a carried out the line, which my kids want to go to the type of schools that require that math track, and because I didn't see growth. I want my kids to be here. My daughter is here because she's interested in being here. The plan is to go around, but it's been asked, and that's my personal parent perspective on that question.
Well, thank you everyone very much. We appreciate that you took the time to come out rain tonight to be with us. We've heard you, okay, we've heard you. And as we walk, get ready for our budget season and other decisions, we will definitely process everything that you said. We have a live stream, so we will also be able to watch it. And we appreciate everything you said. And I can tell you, we heard. Thank you so much.
And that we, at any time, you can email us, board members, Strafford, etc. We found online, anytime you email us, and we review all communication of the next board meeting. And there's a public comment section at the beginning and end of every board meeting. You're always welcome. You don't have to wait for something like this. If you think of something at any time, you can always email us. So, we encourage you to. It's very quiet at board meetings. We don't have a